The cold wasn't sudden. It crept in. Like something alive. At first, it was just a chill under the door. Then the walls felt damp. Then the silence became heavy. By 2:13 a.m., the heater stopped pretending. No hum. No vibration. Just stillness. I wrapped my daughter in 2 blankets and turned on the oven for warmth, something I swore I'd never do. She looked at me and whispered, "Mom, are we in trouble?" That question stayed with me. Not because of fear. Because of conditioning. She thought cold was our fault. That's what greed does. It convinces you suffering is something you deserve. I checked my phone. 3 other tenants had posted in the building group chat. No heat. Again. Then I made the mistake of checking social media. There he was. Richard Halston. Tailored coat. Marble balcony. City skyline behind him. Caption. Grind now. Enjoy later. I stared at it for a long time. Because while my daughter's fingers were turning pale, he was posting motivational quotes. And that's when something shifted inside me. The cold wasn't the worst part. The indifference was. Richard didn't shout. He didn't threaten loudly. He preferred silence. Silence is more efficient. He raised rent slowly. Ignored repair tickets strategically. Responded to complaints with rehearsed empathy. I understand your frustration. But nothing changed. Because this wasn't negligence. It was math. He bought buildings in places where people couldn't afford to leave. Single mothers like me. Retirees on fixed incomes. Immigrant families with limited credit. He didn't need to fix problems. He just needed tenants too afraid to fight. And fear spreads fast in tight hallways. But here's what he didn't know. I used to audit corporate risk exposure. Before my husband passed. Before I downsized my life. Before I became just another tenant. My job was identifying vulnerabilities in people who believed they were untouchable. And Richard? He was very touchable. He just didn't know it yet. When I started documenting everything, the retaliation began. Subtle at first. Maintenance requests lost. Emails unanswered. A noise complaint filed against me, fabricated. Then a warning letter for lease noncompliance. No explanation. Just pressure. The goal was clear. Isolate me. Make me look unstable. I started noticing other things. Tenants avoiding eye contact. Whispers in stairwells. Because Richard didn't fight directly. He used suggestion. I'd hate for your lease renewal to be affected. That's how he spoke. Polite. Smiling. Threatening without threatening. One evening, I found a typed note slipped under my door. Stop causing problems. No name. No signature. Just enough to make my daughter ask if we were moving. For a moment, I questioned myself. Was I pushing too hard? Was I risking our home? And that's the dangerous part of psychological pressure. It makes you doubt your own reality. But fear works both ways. Because the more pressure he applied, the more I knew I was getting close. I stopped thinking like a tenant. I started thinking like an auditor. I pulled property records. Loan filings. Corporate disclosures. And that's when I saw it. Halston Urban Holdings wasn't stable. It was leveraged. He had refinanced aggressively. Used projected rental increases to secure expansion loans. Meaning occupancy consistency was critical. Meaning public legal violations were radioactive. Meaning he couldn't afford noise. And suddenly, the note under my door made sense. He wasn't intimidating me. He was protecting his structure. Because if inspectors flagged systemic neglect, banks could trigger review clauses. Investors could freeze expansion. His empire was actually a tightrope. And I had just started shaking it. The eviction notice arrived on a Thursday. No warning. 30 days. Grounds, lease disturbance. I stared at the paper for a long time. My daughter saw it before I could hide it. Are we being kicked out? The fear in her voice did something irreversible inside me. That was the moment this stopped being about housing. This became about power. He wanted me desperate. He wanted me scrambling. Instead, I filed a counteraction. Legally. Strategically. I submitted temperature logs. Violation records. Tenant testimonies. And then I did something he never expected. I went public. Not loud. Not emotional. Precise. Calculated. A journalist I once helped during a compliance investigation remembered me. When I showed him the documentation, he didn't hesitate. The story ran Sunday night. The headline wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. Luxury portfolio, neglected tenants. That was enough. Investors began calling. The city sent inspectors. Violations multiplied. And Richard? He stopped smiling. But here's where it got darker. Instead of backing down, he escalated. Private security began appearing near the building entrance. Lease audits initiated. Tenants questioned individually. Divide and conquer. But something unexpected happened. The more pressure he applied, the more united we became. Because when fear becomes visible, it becomes shareable. And shared fear turns into courage. He requested a meeting. Alone. His office was silent. No assistant. No smile. You're damaging my company, he said calmly. I met his gaze. You're damaging families. He offered money. Relocation assistance. A clean break. All this ends if you walk away. For a second, I imagined peace. No stress. No retaliation. But then I remembered something from years ago. A collapsed development firm. Safety corners cut. Tenants displaced overnight. I had audited that case. The internal deferment signatures looked familiar. Too familiar. And I realized something chilling. Richard wasn't new to this. He had done this before. Different company. Same tactics. Back then, he avoided consequence. This time? He rented to the one person who remembered. Here's what no one knew. When I went public, I didn't just send documents to a journalist. I sent them to a regulatory contact from that old audit case. Someone who owed me. Because years ago, my original report about that collapsed development? It was buried. Modified. Softened. By executive pressure. The lead investor behind that cover-up? A silent partner in Halston Urban Holdings. Richard thought he was protecting profits. But he had unknowingly reopened an old investigation. One that never truly closed. Within weeks, financial reviews expanded beyond our building. Past filings scrutinized. Previous projects reopened. Deferred maintenance patterns exposed. This wasn't about heat anymore. It was about systemic deception. And Richard realized too late. I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was finishing something I started 5 years ago. The board forced his resignation quietly. Banks restructured loans under compliance supervision. 2 properties placed under monitored management. The building sold to a housing cooperative group. Repairs were immediate. Heat restored. Rent stabilized. But here's the part that still haunts me. Months later, I saw him outside a courthouse. Alone. No entourage. No confidence. He looked at me like I had destroyed him. You could have taken the settlement, he said. I shook my head. You could have fixed the heater. Silence. And in that silence, he understood something he never had before. Greed isn't power. It's exposure waiting to happen. People think revenge is loud. It isn't. It's controlled. It's patient. It's understanding someone's structure better than they do. My daughter doesn't remember the cold anymore. She remembers the day the heat came back. She remembers neighbors celebrating. She remembers strength. And that matters more than anything. Because greed depends on silence. On isolation. On fear. But once someone breaks that silence, the structure trembles. Richard believed money insulated him. But insulation fails when pressure builds inside. He didn't lose because I was louder. He lost because I understood him. And that's the most dangerous thing you can be. To someone who profits from exploitation. Aware.